When it comes to talking about Lincoln Riley, I think it's time we talk about making a change.
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Hulkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC, part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every day, whether you're watching the show on YouTube, wherever you're going to download the podcast. This show is always free, and you know I always appreciate your support. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers, you can place a $5 bet, and you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The question is this: can Lincoln Riley change himself? And I got to tell you, he needs to consider changing his uniform. And by his uniform, I'm not talking about cardinal and gold. I'm talking about the way he dresses up, his offense, the way he presents himself. Because I got to tell you, right now, the wolves are out and he is the prey. I'm seeing quotes like, Lincoln Riley might be the most overrated head coach in Division I football. Lincoln Riley is an offensive genius when he has a great quarterback bailing out his play calling out half the time. Those are the types of comments. Lincoln Riley has gone from offensive guru, quarterback whisperer to who the hell is coaching at USC? Through his first 36 games, we've got to compare him to USC's last head coach. So in their first 36 games, which would be 3 full seasons, regular season, 12 games, Clay Helton was 27-9. Right now, Lincoln Riley, 23-13. Now, you're not making a apples to apples comparison. What Lincoln Riley inherited was a lot different than what Clay Helton inherited as far as personnel, that type of stuff. I'll be the first to admit, Lincoln Riley walked into a dumpster fire. But this is the first time in USC's history. I saw this stat from one of my everyday listeners, everyday viewers, and it blew me away. But apparently it's a fact. USC has never lost, never, in its 100-plus years of playing football, in their history, 4 games in a row in any season. They've never lost 4 games on the road in a row in any USC football season ever. Still, Coach Riley believes he's seeing progress with this year's team. After the game, this is what he told the media. I've told you guys this before. It's like, all right, yeah, how many weeks we got to say this? I understand. But you go change 5, 6 plays a season, and then everybody's like, oh my God, they're freaking unbelievable. And the other 99.9% of the plays that we've played would all be exactly the same. So he's saying he's not going to change anything the way he's calling games if 5 or 6 or a handful of plays have gone differently in USC's favor. He continued, but I've also got to pay attention to the other 99.9% too. I can't ignore that as well. And within that, I see massive progress that will pay dividends for this program and will pay dividends soon. So there you go. Lincoln Riley says he sees massive progress. Despite the results, USC is 4-5. They can't win a close game to save their life. What I see is he continues to look past what everyone from the media, the fans, even former players see. It's like it's this blind spot. Everyone knows, everyone can see, you know what? Yeah, you made massive changes in the offseason. You've got a defense now. You've got a defense that you can actually lean into, rely on. Are they perfect? No. Are they better than what you've ever been accustomed to as a head coach? Yes. But here's the thing. Now he won't adapt his offense. He won't make that change. Everybody knows you need to run the ball more consistently. But for Lincoln Riley to do that, he would have to admit that his way wasn't the right way. And I don't know if he's willing to make that change. If things are going to be different at USC with him as the head coach, the biggest change needs to come from him, from within. Everybody who is watching USC football fall from its grace, from its mountaintop, and it's picking up steam. It's snowballing. Come up with all the cliches and euphemisms you can come up with. It isn't rolling in the right direction right now. Everybody who is watching USC at the end of games, they recognize Lincon Riley is the problem. And it comes down to pride. It comes down to not running the ball. And unfortunately for Coach Riley, his problem is staring him right in the face. Every time he looks in the mirror, that's what he sees. That's the problem. Him. It made me think of the old proverb, pride cometh before the fall. Yeah. Proverbs do warn us that sin of pride is a dangerous offense. The irony of that, right? A dangerous offense. Lincon Riley used to have that. Not anymore. Proverbs 16:18 declares, pride goes with or before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Better to live humbly with the poor than to share the plunder with the proud. End the quote. I mean, that passage is so clear. It's as clear as the running lanes that USC's offensive line was opening in the second half against Washington. And what they've been doing pretty much throughout the season. Definitely for the last, 6, 7 games. I'm not exactly sure what Coach Riley sees that no one else sees, but it's not about a play here or there that's going to change USC's fortunes. Yes. Things would be different if a handful of plays went USC's way, but there's an underlying issue here. You can't keep rationalizing it and saying things would be different by saying, we kind of had an anomaly of a year. Normally, these things end up over time going about 50-50 on these games that come down to one play, and we've happened to have the year that not too many of them have went our way. So I think the biggest thing you need to look at is we've been a good enough team. I know I've said it, but it's still the truth. It's just as true as it was last week against Rutgers. And the wins and the losses and everything. We've been a good enough team to win every game. Here's the thing. Yeah, the Trojans may have been good enough, but being good enough and getting the job done are two different things. Look, I'll say this. After this most recent loss, Coach Riley showed a little bit of humility. He humbled himself slightly. Came after another loss. His team led in the fourth quarter on the road again. So as USC's head coach, he took accountability. He's ultimately responsible for the way the team plays. But I don't think he was humble enough. If you haven't seen his post-game reaction, his post-game press conference, it's on YouTube. Go check it out. I mean, since everything is being done his way, literally, including closing practice, then he has to accept 99% of the responsibility. Look, I'm not looking for him to get on bended knee and apologize, but I will accept a full mea culpa that, he needs to change the way he's doing things. Because I'll tell you what, if he doesn't, the results aren't going to change, and eventually he's going to get run out of town on a rail. When USC hired Coach Riley, I think they thought they were getting one of the best. Everybody thought this. I mean, it was USC's like, oh, did you see what USC pulled off? Everybody across the country said it. Every national pundit. So you thought you were getting the best. Obviously, right now, Coach Riley's best is still yet to come. I'm just not sure he's ready to put his pride aside, humble himself, admit it that he can't keep doing things a certain way just because he thinks he can. You watched my instant reaction show. So what do we do now? I mean, there is still potential, right? Are we going to give up on Lincoln Riley? Are we going to try and start all over again? Or are you going to stick, is USC going to stand behind him? Are they going to help him succeed? Help him find the way? You know where I stand on this. USC's athletic director, Jen Cohen, she needs to make a demand of him. If you're going to be the head coach, you need to be the head coach. Give up play calling duties. That way you can focus on all 100% of the stuff, not just 99%. Right now, USC has a bye week to get their stuff figured out and get to 500, 5-5. They need to, because after the Nebraska game in 2 weeks, you've got 2 rivalry games staring you in the face. Losing those games, ending the season with a below 500 record, I'll tell you what, I will not be shocked. I will not be surprised if all of a sudden the airplane brigade got their act together again and started flying the planes over campus with the banners saying, hey, it's time to fire Lincoln Riley. I don't think Jen Cohen wants to deal with that. Remember, she didn't hire him. And she's been inside those post-game pressers. Her and I gave each other one of those I acknowledge you smiles. Yeah, I see you looking at me. I see you looking at me. I was trying to see her reactions to the way Coach Riley was answering questions. I'm not sure Jen Cohen is ready to answer anybody's questions about this right now. Obviously, end of the year, things will be evaluated. But right now, unless Coach Riley changes the way he coaches on offense, I don't think anybody should anticipate things going differently. As they say, pride cometh before the fall. If Coach Riley's going to hold on to this, eventually he's going to trip, fall, bang his knee. We'll see where he ends up after that. It won't be at USC. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby. It's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy to power up to get through those all-day tailgates, celebrating those touchdowns during the game, staying in the stadium when the game goes into overtime. And let's be honest, being a Trojan fan this season, it's taking a lot more energy than we thought we would have to give, which is why they've created Stay in the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor that's called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans just like you. It's for the fans who are first in the parking lot and who are the last to leave. Trust me, I see you guys. I used to be one of you guys. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. That's why the limited edition Stay in the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help you keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. So, how are things going inside USC's locker room? If you were going to try and say, hey, I wonder, play the game, I wonder how things are going. I think things are going well in the locker room right now. Everything copacetic. Everybody's still on the same page. Everybody pulling, not pulling and pushing. I'll tell you, I'm hearing from a couple of sources that more players are starting to be a little bit more vocal about not trusting the direction the team is headed right now. There's a little uneasiness. People looking around at each other thinking, is this what we signed up for? You like what you're hearing? That type of stuff. Keep in mind, players want to play. So emotions right now, probably a little bit raw. these are players. When you're not playing, they believe they are the solution. They think to themselves, well, hell, you keep putting that guy out there. He's not getting the job done. I can do it. Give me a chance, coach. There are two things that Coach Riley needs to do over the bye week going into the Nebraska game. He's got to do these two things to get everybody back on the same page. Assuming everybody is maybe not. One, you can make a change that might spark, a little bit of enthusiasm. I don't know whether it's a quarterback or I don't know. Make a commitment to the run game. It doesn't have to be a personnel change per se. What have we been talking about? USC's offense is built to run the ball. That's what they do best. Make that commitment. Show the team you're willing to do whatever's in their best interest. Because throwing the ball 50 times a game isn't. I have no idea if Coach Riley is going to make the change full-time at quarterback. He was asked about it after the game. Said he wasn't ready to do that yet. He wasn't ready to make that commitment. I think one thing is very clear. After these last, 6, 7 games, as I said, I've been saying it for a while now. USC's offensive identity should be lean into that run game. Use Woody Marks. Use Quentin Joyner. Use Brian Jackson. Use Amarian Peterson. Let the passing game work off of the running game, not the other way around. So what happens first? Are you going to see a quarterback change? Or is Coach Riley going to change his stripes? Is he going to change the way he calls the game? Because look, if a locker room doesn't believe they're getting a fair shot at playing time, if they don't believe in the process because they keep seeing the same players being trotted out there, making the same mistakes week after week sometimes, no accountability. That's the way it's perceived. When players start to believe that in today's era of college football, all of a sudden now losing plus the transfer portal, those two things start becoming BFFs in college football. Yeah, best friends forever. People are saying, well, all right, Mark, how come they haven't made the quarterback change? I've heard that one reason could be Jaden Mayaba hasn't learned the entire playbook. Coach Riley, he hasn't earned Coach Riley's trust yet. There's a lot to know with this offense. When you watch it, you're thinking, what's there to know? It doesn't look that creative. Whatever. Right now, Coach Riley does not have the trust in Jaden Mayaba than he has over Miller Moss. For whatever the reason is, that's why he's not playing. I've heard that from one source. Others are saying, I've heard from another source, no, that's not the case. Look, if you don't play Mayaba this year, I mean, we're now going into the final 3 games of the season. You're taking a huge risk that he's going to jump back into the transfer portal. You're assuming Miller Moss is coming back next year. At this point, Julian Lewis is still committed to be a Trojan. We'll talk about recruiting in the next segment. How USC's play this year is going to affect their recruiting class. But Miller Moss, Juju Lewis, Jaden Mayaba is going to come back next year? Why? Why would he? I mean, you would think great if he does. That's going to be a really healthy competition during spring ball. But at the end of spring camp, if all 3 of those quarterbacks are there, 1 or 2, more than likely 1 is jumping into that transfer portal. It's not going to be the new recruit. I doubt it's going to be Miller Moss. You have to assume. And if you're not talking about the quarterback jumping into the transfer portal, what about the running backs? I mean, Brian Jackson not getting used. Again, he's a true freshman. Quentin Joyner, he's not touching the ball enough despite getting 8 yards a touch. Not every time, but that's his average. You saw Marion Peterson. He was the up guy on a short kickoff. He took out his frustrations then. Nice return, ran hard. I mean, why should running backs want to come play at USC, play for Coach Riley, if he's going to treat them like a redheaded, stepchild? Coach Riley also said this. It's kind of like I told you guys. I watch a team. It's not like we're getting our ass kicked. So it's not like I go back to the drawing board like, God, we're just doing this terrible and people are just wearing us out on this or that. I mean, it's not like that. And this team has shown capability to do the kind of things that you need to do. We just need to continue to keep our nose to the grindstone. We've got to continue to lean on these leaders. We've got to continue to get better. We certainly need to get healthier, which this bye week will help us, to give us a chance to be full steam ahead for this last stretch, end quote. I don't know. If you're not using the players, what does that mean? There's one more thing. I would suggest. Look, if you're not making the quarterback change and you're looking for guys to get healthy, okay. You need to make some other personnel changes to show the team you're not tone deaf. It might soothe some of these raw nerves. Again, if I'm hearing that players are wondering, what direction are we going? What are we doing? You have to kind of take that with a grain of salt, but at the same time thinking, all right, where there's smoke, there's fire. This is going to be Coach Riley's biggest challenge when the season ends. Who's he going to want to see go? He might want to see some of these guys end up hitting the transfer portal. Others he might want to keep. Still a pretty young team. But again, in this day and age, NIL, transfer portal, players have the opportunity to go other places, especially if they don't feel like they're getting a fair chance. All right. So again, this episode of Locked On USC is all about change. Whether it's Lincon Riley changing what he does, as far as play calling. In the second segment, we talked about making personnel changes. In the next segment, we're going to talk about recruiting. Is USC's season having an effect on their 2025 recruiting class? Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers, you can bet $5 and you're going to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and you can do it all in one place. Now, when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Oh, look, I know that one thing that bothers USC fans about Lincon Riley is recruiting. The biggest thing that bothers USC fans about Lincon Riley's recruiting, his lack of locking up the home kids, the guys in his own backyard in Southern California. Those recruits, the recruits at Bosco and Mater Dei, Long Beach Poly, Sarah, Milliken. I can name off every program you want me to list off. On yesterday's instant reaction show, I wasn't sure which player from Washington blew up that 4th and 1 at that goal line stand at the end of the game. Well, I found out. One of my everydayers. He said, Mark, that person, that player, true freshman, St. John Bosco. His name, Kamari House. One of those Bosco players came back to beat USC. Well, to help beat USC. I don't know how much interest USC had in him coming out, but apparently not enough. He's not a Trojan. Something that I think all USC recruiting fans right now are watching with their peripheral vision as they focus on the regular season is the 2025 recruiting class. They're wondering, when is it going to unravel? And, specifically, when is the bottom just going to fall out? So far, you're starting to see some chinks in the arbor. Little pieces starting to crumble off. Athlete DeJuan Morris from the state of Tennessee, he's apparently having second thoughts. Both Scott Schrader and Steve Wiltfong from the On3 network, they changed their prediction to Tennessee. It's not a good sign. And look, I have no inside information on this. I have no idea if USC is cooling on him or if DeJuan doesn't like the direction things are going on offense right now. Either way, again, it's a chink in the armor. It's somebody that you would think would run to want to play for USC. Being coached up by Lincon Riley, offensive guru. Nope. More than likely, he's going to end up at the University of Tennessee. And now, all of a sudden, if you've been hanging out on social media, this is never a good sign. You got, one parent of one of the current USC players, she's trying to save recruits from decommitting. Here's what you need to know, okay? Recruiting is a dirty business. Lots of stuff gets said behind the scenes. Negative recruiting, NIL promises. I'm going to tell you right now, do not be surprised if you hear more names saying they're going to reopen their recruitment. Do not be shocked, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I think everybody's anticipating Carday Smith, the offensive lineman from the state of Alabama, who was once committed to Auburn, who's now committed to USC. I think he's going to eventually decommit and join the Colorado bandwagon. We'll see what happens. That's been in the works for a while. Again, keep an eye on what happens with Julian Lewis. Scott Schrader over there on wearesc.com, he's starting to reach out to some of the commits that are some of the commits to USC's 2025 class. You need to go check it out when you're done watching this episode. He's just trying to get where their heads are at right now. USC's 4-5. How strong is their commitment to USC? Well, and here's why you need to go over there when you're done watching this episode. You can sign up right now for $1. You'll get 1 week for $1. If you like what you're reading, you can get a whole season for 50% off the regular subscription rate. Go do it. Take advantage. But in the meantime, I'll give you one nugget. So Scott spoke to one defensive commit from USC's backyard, and he said this: "Hey, Scott, it's always good to hear from you. Despite the team's record, it doesn't really determine my commitment. I'm still 100% committed to USC. What the defensive staff has done this year alone, I know I have plenty to learn from them. That's who I trusted. Their starters have been out here, and they are the next man up. Has been handling business. They are expected to have a mistake or two, even in the NFL. They aren't perfect. That's how we learn and get better. We go to film and fix it." I need to start filling in words when you're quoting these kids verbatim, because nobody talks in full sentences anymore. I apologize to my listeners, to my viewers. It's confusing even to me when I'm reading it. So this commitment continued. USC is taking a chance on me, and I'm going to continue to have faith in them. Let's get through adversity together. It's a new conference they entered, and they are holding their own. I'm still rocking with the DB room. Doug Belk and Lynn are still my guys. Every year is a new year, and my plan is to get there and learn and make a difference. USC is still home. It's always fight on. I apologize for chopping it up, but again, I'm trying to read this thing verbatim. So at least you've got one recruit who is solid, and he's from Southern California. That's who USC needs to continue to recruit. The Southern California recruits. Those guys tend to care a little bit more. Again, they're from the area. That's who they grew up watching. They're going to care a little bit more, I would think, than recruits who are coming from across the country. I don't know, look at it this way. It's kind of like if somebody calls your brother or your sister a name, you get a little defensive about it. Same thing with the local recruits. You know, that person might have been right who called your brother or sister a name, but they don't get to say it. They haven't earned that right. Loose analogy, but Southern California recruits, high school kids, they don't want to see USC going out of town getting players. They don't understand why they're not good enough to play at USC. They care about it. So we'll see. We will see how Lincon Riley and the rest of the coaching staff can hold on to this recruiting class. Because these losses, they're not helping. Defensively, they look great. Offensively, they look not great. That's a Lincon Riley problem. Lincon Riley needs to make some changes. I'll be back with another episode tomorrow. It's what we do 5 times a week. There won't be a game this week. Nevertheless, there's still plenty to talk about. There will be practice reports. I will have inside information. There'll be recruiting updates. So until that next episode, tomorrow, everyone, you know what to do.